Hi, a very good day to everybody, and I'm super happy that I can be a little bit present in this way to introduce some background to placemaking. Why is it important, and how can we do it in practice? I hope you have a very good conference, and I hope this helps to inspire everybody present in the conference. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm one of the founding partners of STIPO. We're a team for better cities based in Amsterdam, Athens, and Milan in various cities in Europe. We're also the initiator and the author of the City at Eye Level research program and the books trying to understand the mechanisms behind better places and how we can get more of those in our daily practice in our cities. And I'm also one of the board members of Placemaking Europe, the European Network for Placemaking, with now currently about 13,000 people in the network in all corners of Europe and growing very much. And we're very happy that there is a good and growing network in the Czech Republic as well. With STIPO, we are very much a value-based organization. We want to help create areas that are long-lasting, that are there not only 40 years from now, but are also valued still 100, hopefully 200 years from now. And from our research, these then are crucial core values to embed into the development process. And very important then is the quality of the public space, the human scale, the soul of the place, and the mental ownership of users, which a lot of that comes around through placemaking. Just a quick example of some projects that we work on. We help to scale up existing placemakers from temporary to permanent by helping them with an investment fund and turning them from temporary activations into more permanent places. This, for instance, is a hub for the circular economy in Utrecht that we help to grow 5 times as large and help to grow from a temporary location for 15 years to a permanent location, creating a lot of social impact for the neighborhood. And this is more a large-scale project that we tend to be involved in, area development, area transformation in Utrecht of 6,000 new houses, 100,000 square meters of work and amenities, all organized around a new park, 10 new squares and 20 inner courtyards. Very high density, so it's very important that here the public space really has very high quality. There's no cars on the street. The cars are only parked in mobility hubs, but all the public space is for people, for animals, for green. And the city at eye level criteria that I'm going to be talking about are very much embedded into the planning documents from the very first beginning. I'm now part of the supervision team to judge the development plan. So we've been involved in this for about 7 years already. So this is more the larger scale kind of operation that we do. I would like to first begin with the why, maybe. Why is what we are doing so important? Why is the conference you're having in Brno so important? And let's dive into the values of great places. Are we doing this just to create nice places that are better looking, or are there deeper lying values? And we think so. Because if you Google the future of cities, then these are kind of the images you get. Flying cars, separated spaces, towers in the park. And unfortunately, by the way, this is already what we're building in a lot of cities in the world. But we really hope that this is not the future of cities. We really hope that we are not creating bleak urban spaces that are disconnected. This is a picture by Ethan Kent, who is leading Placemaking X, the global network for placemaking in Bilbao. And of course, this is the famous museum there. But right after he took this picture, the guy on the left mugged the guy on the right and stole his money. And Ethan went to the police with the victim and the picture, and the police said, yeah, this is the place in the city where most people are being robbed because there is no eyes on the street. It's a public space, but there's no people there. And I think it's very sad that we invest all this money in such a beautiful museum, of course, but why can't we not combine that with better places? Because this is, when we were in Pontevedra, this was in the city center, really where people were celebrating their birthday on the public square. And I think this is hopefully more the quality of the future of cities that we aim for. Luckily, we see some newly built projects that really cater for this, like King's Cross in London, really all organized around urban life, around social quality, around economic vibrancy, about quality of public space and active curation of ground floor uses. But unfortunately, a lot of the times in newly built transformations, we see we're not getting this. So this is why we do this research about what is the city at eye level, how do we experience, and what does that mean for criteria and hands-on approaches that we can do to make more human-scaled cities, really. And you can download all the books for free on the websites. They're all open source. For us, it's really not only about nice-looking public spaces, but it's very much about the deeper lying social values behind this. This is walking in my own city, the city of Amsterdam. And right after I took this picture, we got into a conversation with this gentleman who's reading a book here. And he told me he is living alone in his apartment. And by the way, more and more people are living alone in cities. The single households are becoming the dominant households, even to the point that some cities are faced with a loneliness epidemic. So these are really things to think about when we develop our cities. And sometimes when he feels lonely, he likes to be part of public life, sit in front of his home on the porch. He brings his book, but he already knows he's not going to be able to read it because the neighbors pass by, and you have a little chat about the weather, about the groceries, about the kids, etc. So this is a mini social place, and this is really the level where it begins to think about the quality of places, not just spaces, but really places where people will use them in a social manner. And we know from research by Young Gale that if you have this hybrid space in front of your home, kind of this transition zone from private to public, then that accounts for 80% of spontaneous informal context in the neighborhood, which also means that if you don't create it, you miss out on 80% of spontaneous social context in the neighborhood. And of course, from these little chats, new networks can come into being. It's kind of the beginning of community building in the neighborhoods. We know that the more eyes there are on the street and the higher, the better the networks and then people have in the neighborhood, the higher the social capital is, and the smaller the chances that people die by natural causes and by crime. So it has a direct effect on our health, on our safety. You want places like these where really the life of buildings pours out into the street and creates a lot of eyes on the street and a lot of safety feeling and a lot of spontaneous contacts. Now, there is a deep relation also with health. If we want to create a more healthy community, then a lot of the decisions we make in urban planning, in urban design, in the way we treat public spaces, have a direct relationship to the health of people. There's a growing body of evidence. These are slides by the International Society of Urban Health, who have been doing extensive research about this. So this is kind of the summary of the research of the International Society of Urban Health. And you see how air pollution, noise, health, insufficient physical activity like walking, cycling, playing in public space, meeting other people, and insufficient green spaces can really have a lot of health damages. And that means that we really need to focus on those effects in creating our places. This, for instance, is a study on how a street without trees and a street with trees can have the difference of about 20 degrees Celsius felt temperature. And that's the difference between walking or sitting in your car with an aircon. For instance, Singapore is really leading the way here. 20 years ago, they said, we're not a garden city, a city with parks, but we should be a city in a garden. Everything has to be green. And from then on, every street they developed, every new building that was developed has to be green, green, green everywhere. This is a summary we made with our Cities in Placemaking network under the wings of Placemaking Europe, 13 cities in Europe who've been working on how to embrace placemaking in all the aspects of our urban policies and the way we work. And these transitions, really, we cannot expect cities to do alone. We need the energy and the creativity of local communities, and for the top-down system and the bottom-out up system to work together on these. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to make it through these transitions. So that leads us to a couple of key lessons of what we learned in the City at Eye Level program on what to do. First of all, we see in all the best practices, and this is the plan of San Francisco through the decades, 1899, 1931, and 1976. And you see how the buildings change, but you also see that once you have a public space structure, it will be there forever, right? So public space is really the backbone for sustainable development, and it should be the first thing we think about when we develop an area. So like Jan Gehl says, first life, then space, and only then buildings, and not the other way around. But what we very often do if we develop a new area of the city or transform an existing area, we first plan all the buildings. Whatever space we have left is what we call public space, but then there's nobody there. So really start from the public life and the social life and the public space first. Second key lesson is that if you have a public space, it's a three-dimensional environment. It's not enough just to only create a nice street surface. The buildings you see are very much part of the public space experience. So it's a shared responsibility between the city, building owners, building developers, building designers, and building users to create a nice public space. Because if you have a nice public space in itself, but the building is like this, you're still not going to feel at home. So we say, this is not public space, but this is public space, including the facades of buildings. And as you walk on the sidewalk next to buildings, what you see the most is the city at eye level, the ground floor, and what happens there. That's the most important part of the building. It determines about 80% of your street experience, maybe only 20% of a building, but it determines 80% of your street experience. Third lesson is about turning spaces into places. We have a lot of public spaces in our city that are not necessarily great places. And it's like the hierarchy of Maslow's needs that you may know. People first want to be safe, want to have food and shelter. And only once that is taken care of, you start to develop the higher values like social development, friends, creative activities, and etc. Right? And the same thing goes for public space, because if a city creates a public space, they might want to keep it clean, safe, and do basic maintenance. But that's really only the space. If you want to turn a space into a place where people feel at home, it's about higher values. It's about also the place being social, active, fun, creative, inspiring. And you really only achieve that by co-creating with and for the community. So it's the municipality and the community combined that help to turn spaces into places. And I would say this is an example of a public space, but not a great place. But this is more the sense of place that you have, where people laugh, where people gather in groups, where people take selfies, where people spend time. These are all the telltale signs of this is not a space, but this is a place, really. And we feel that we don't have enough places in our cities. We don't have enough of these social places. All of our communities in our cities should deserve a heart of the community, a great place at the heart of it, whether it's at the edge of the city, in the lower income community, or at the center of the city. Fourth lesson, throughout all the best practices in the research, we see that it's not enough to create a nice design. You really have to think first about the social life, like we said in the first lesson as well, so what we like to call the software, the uses and the activities of public space. So very often the first intervention is not to create a new design, but to program activities in public space. And in order to do that in a longer term process, you also need a third part of the triangle relationship between hardware, software, and orgware. That is the orgware. You need to have coalitions between the street users, the building owners, the municipality, etc. And then the fifth and last lesson, and this is a quote from Richard Sennett and Saskia Sassen, Ricky Burdett, and Joan Close in their new Charter of Athens. public spaces should be developed by and for the public as common goods, and they should be incomplete enough for the users to also want to be able to co-create it. If a space is over-designed, it doesn't invite the users to co-create, really. Like a market is, the street vendors are co-creating, and the users of the market are co-creating the feeling of this place. A ground floor, the ground floor shop is co-creating the vibe of the street here. Or here, an artist was kind enough to co-create this wall that would have otherwise been quite a terrible wall. And there's this wonderful example in Amsterdam where the city allows you to take out, as a resident, the first tile of the sidewalk, and they come and help you in order to create a facade garden. And then you, as a resident, can co-create the green feeling of the public space. And in a street like this, the neighbors tend to compete with each other for who has the most beautiful facade garden. So it's really all about co-creating with the public. So the 5 key lessons are: great public space should be the backbone of any development. It's a 3-dimensional experience, not a 2-dimensional experience. So it includes the facades of buildings. To get from space to place, we need to co-create. So to summarize these 5 key lessons that we take out of the city at eye level research, we really see that it should start with public life and public space. That should be the backbone of thinking about our cities and new developments and transformations, and not start with the buildings. Great public space is a 3-dimensional experience, so it includes the facades of buildings, and it's a shared responsibility with building developers, building owners, building designers. To get from public space to place, we need to co-create between the municipality and the community and the users of the street. They bring the life, they curate the sense of belonging very much, and the sense of ownership. Successful cases should always work based on the triangle relationship between software, urban life, functions, and activities in public space. Hardware, the design of public space and the human scale of it, and the orgware, the coalitions that we have between all the stakeholders to co-create public space through the years, through the time. It often takes years to turn a space into a place. And then lastly, for co-creation, the area should be incomplete enough for the community, for the users to be able to co-create the place. Now, with these lessons, we can see what can we then actually do? How can we start tomorrow? Because that's also very much the placemaking mindset, of course. We have a long-term vision, but we also like to create quick wins on the short term together with the community, with the energy of a lot of people. So how do we turn a space into a place? There is a lot of criteria for this. We want spaces to be informal, incomplete, have an intimate skill, be inclusive, be innovative. There are the criteria of the project for public spaces that you can look up on the internet for creating great places, all based very much on the work of William White and many others before us. We have the criteria of the city at eye level in the book that you can find online. But let's just see how we can use those in practice. So since the software is so important, very often placemaking really doesn't start with changing the design. It starts with programming activities, things to do. Like Bryant Park, in this example in New York, it has a team of people programming daily activities, like book readings, book clubs, workshops in public space, dance, theater, sports like yoga lessons in public space. These are easy to organize. You can do it tomorrow and start to activate your place. Second, in your city, it's very important to think about the quality of your public squares. Those should be the anchors of life. Those should be vibrant. That's really where you should focus your time and energy. So to bring back the public square into the public life and to start programming there. Then third, there's a deep relationship between markets and public life. And then we like to see markets not just only as places for buying and selling. Markets can be so much more, right? Markets can be places where startup entrepreneurs, startup businesses, where we find food that is healthy local food, that promote the local farmers, where we have social contexts, where we interact with each other. So they can be social places, and where we also experience the heritage of the city. This is really the philosophy, for instance, that the city of Barcelona uses. They have 43 covered markets because every community has a covered market at the heart of it as a social meeting place. So activate your markets is very important for great places. Then you can start to think about the sidewalks on the streets, how we open them up more, how we bring life to the sidewalks, how we allow for chairs to be placed there, for terraces, of course, not to privatize the entire public space, but to really bring life, to balance out. And in a good street, the amount of paid seats where you have to pay for a coffee in order to be able to sit there, and the amount of free seats should be around 50-50. Turn buildings inside out, let the life of the buildings pour into the street more. And of course, this is something that takes a bit more time already. And also do that with public buildings. As a municipality, you can really start with showing the good examples of your own buildings that you own and start programming life around and bring the life out more. Turn sidewalks into multi-use hubs, really, with various destinations and things to do. Whereas often, for instance, we see newly built buildings are like this. They don't really cater for places where you can sit, linger, spend time outside of the building. So include that into your strategy. A lot of the aspects of great places really start with the amount of spaces where you can sit. People like to sit in public space, observe other people. So the quality of benches is super, super important. And it starts by counting the amount of benches and then the quality of benches as social places in the public space. Let's not forget, if you're an elderly person and you can't walk that well anymore, you basically need a bench every 200 meters. Then people like water. If you have a waterfront, of course, it has to be safe in times of floodings that we now unfortunately saw a lot throughout Europe. But water can be a quality as well. To experience the water, to be there, to experience the quality of waterfronts in a safe way is a thing you can capitalize on. Then we want to be inclusive in our approach. We want to make sure that everybody has access to public space. And that means if we work with the community, also actively seek for the weaker voices, maybe the voices that aren't often heard. Include parents with children, include the elderly, include people with a disability into the design and the use process of public space, and make sure it's really an inclusive place for everybody, no matter what your physical condition is, no matter what age you have, no matter what kind of wallet you have. And the last and maybe most important rule in placemaking, we like to have a lot of fun, because that's when the community will come out. That's when they want to participate. Make sure you engage and organize fun activities, engage with the community and build from there. And make sure you bring the fun aspect to the design as well, to the kind of the feeling of place. It's not just about sterile places. It's also about places where we feel that we can have a lot of fun, right? So these are kind of 11 practical things that you can do to turn a space into a place. And we hope that this brings a lot of inspiration to your conference and to Brno, for the community to look this up and see how you can start by working from a long-term vision, but start tomorrow, start taking action together tomorrow, really. If you'd like to learn more, there's a whole toolbox on the website of Placemaking Europe with step-by-step manuals for a lot of tools that you can use to turn spaces into places, to engage the community, to work with children, to do street activations, to analyze the quality of streets, etc., etc. So please find them on the website. Of course, we have the annual conference. We just had it in Rotterdam. And the city of next year is announced in Rotterdam. So that will be the end of September, where a lot of placemakers from all over Europe come together and learn from each other, including municipalities, including grassroots placemakers, including real estate developers. Everybody should be on board. And if you'd like to learn more deeply, 2 to 4 June 2025, we give the annual English city level and placemaking training. It's a 3-day training, this time in Berlin. And you can find the link on the website of STIPO and of the city at Eiligo. So with that, I would like to thank you all and wish you a huge and wonderful, important conference and a lot of fun, hopefully. Thank you very much.